My wife secretly sold our family home for $350, $0 to pay off her ex's gambling debts, then convinced me to sign over half of our savings. Now she's claiming I cheated her out of her inheritance. What do I do? Hello, everyone. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin the video. Using a throwaway for obvious reasons, with certain specifics modified to preserve anonymity. I never thought I'd be the guy to get blindsided like this, but here I am, sitting in a silence so loud I can hear my own heartbeat. My wife, Lisa, had always been the kind of woman who could charm her way out of anything. Beautiful, smart, a little bitchy, but I loved her, or at least I thought I did. Things started to feel off a few months ago, little things that added up. She'd be secretive with her phone, quick to dismiss my questions about her whereabouts, and she'd get defensive when I pressed her about money. Still, I never thought she was capable of betrayal on this level. It all came crashing down when I stumbled across a series of emails on her laptop. I was just trying to print some documents when I saw her email account open, and there it was, an exchange with her ex, Mark. I knew Mark from a few years back. He was the guy she'd always claimed was just a friend. But reading those emails, I realized they'd been more than friends for a long time. They'd been sneaking around behind my back, planning things I never suspected. The emails were explicit. They talked about meeting up, about how much they missed each other, about how they'd get together once I was out of the picture. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. My stomach twisted and a cold sweat broke out. I couldn't believe it. My wife, who I thought was my partner, had been cheating on me with her ex, but that wasn't all. I found out she sold our house, our family home, without telling me for $350, $0. She claimed she did it to pay off Mark's gambling debts. That was the real reason she'd been so secretive about her finances lately. I confronted her that night. I was furious, hurt, confused all at once. When I showed her the emails, her face went pale. She tried to deny it at first, saying I was just jealous, that I was reading too much into things. But then she snapped. She called me paranoid, said I was overreacting, that Mark was just a friend, and that I was being unreasonable. She insisted that I owed her for everything, that she'd sacrificed so much for us. She even had the audacity to say I cheated her out of her inheritance, like I had stolen something from her. The thing is, I was stunned. I never imagined she'd do something like this. I felt betrayed, not just because of the affair, but because of the way she lied, manipulated, and turned everything around on me. I've been working hard to keep our lives together, and she was out there sneaking around, selling our house and lying about her intentions. I started to question everything, our entire marriage, her motives, what I'd done wrong. I was angry, yes, but mostly I felt helpless, like I'd been played for a fool. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying the betrayal, the lies, the way she looked when I confronted her. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I didn't see it coming. I felt so stupid. I'd always thought we had a solid life, a future. Now that future seemed shattered. I was trying to hold it all together, but deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of something much darker. The trust was gone, and I could feel the foundation of everything we built crumbling beneath me. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. Not without a fight. After that night, everything felt like a blur. I spent the next few days trying to process what I'd discovered, but the pain kept surfacing like a wound that wouldn't heal. I couldn't stop thinking about how she'd lied to me, how she'd secretly sold our house and convinced me to sign over half of our savings. That money was supposed to be for our future, for retirement, for our kids if we ever decided to have any. Instead, she gambled with it and then lied about it. I started digging into the financial mess she'd made. I went to the bank and got statements, and that's when I found out she drained a significant chunk of our savings, more than she admitted to. She convinced me to sign a joint account over to her, claiming she needed it for some emergency, but instead she used it to cover her debts and her affair. The more I looked, the more I saw how carefully she'd planned everything. She'd always been good at hiding her tracks, but I was finally catching on. One day I decided to confront her again, this time with the evidence spread out on our dining table. She was sitting there, sipping her coffee like everything was normal, and I just laid it all out. I showed her the bank statements, the emails, the sale of the house. Her face twisted into a sneer, and she started to lie even more. She told me she'd done it all for us, that she was trying to protect me from the truth, which was that Mark was the one who kept pressuring her to sell the house to pay off his debts. She claimed she was just trying to help him, that she never wanted me. To find out like this, I couldn't believe her. She was a master at spinning stories, twisting everything to make herself look like the victim, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I could see through her lies. I felt a rage building inside me, part heartbreak, part fury. I knew I had to do something, but I wasn't sure what yet. I just knew I couldn't stay silent. I told her I wanted a divorce, that I wanted her out of my life. She scoffed and said I was overreacting, that I was just jealous, that I was crazy for accusing her of cheating. That was when I realized she'd been lying so much she believed her own lies. That day, I started planning my next move. I wanted her to pay for what she'd done, but I also needed to protect myself and whatever was left of our assets. I figured I'd get a lawyer, find out what she was hiding, and make sure she didn't get away with stealing from me. I knew she'd try to spin it, try to manipulate the situation, but I was done trusting her. Every time I thought about it, I felt this mixture of betrayal and determination. She might have thought she was clever, but I was coming for her. Meanwhile, she kept up her act, playing the victim, crying about how I was accusing her unfairly. She said I was just trying to ruin her, that I was paranoid and jealous. But I saw through her facade now. I saw her for what she really was, a liar, a cheater, someone who'd do anything to save her own skin. It made me sick to realize I'd been blind for so long, that I'd let her manipulate me and take advantage of my trust. I was furious at myself for not seeing the signs earlier, for believing her when she told me she loved me. But from now on, I was going to fight back. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she'd stolen. I had to protect what was mine, and I had to make her face the consequences of her actions. I knew this was just the beginning, but I was ready to see it through. I wanted her to feel what it was like to be betrayed, to be lied to be used. And I was going to make damn sure she paid for it. The days that followed were a whirlwind. I hired a lawyer, and from the moment I sat down with him, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe I could get some clarity. Maybe I could stop her from draining everything I'd worked for. But even as I started to piece everything together legally, I knew this was going to get uglier before it got better. Lisa's true colors came out more than ever during those conversations. She tried to spin it again, claiming I was just jealous of her relationship with Mark, that she'd never truly cheated, just explored her options. She said I was paranoid, that I was just upset because I was losing control. But I knew better. I had evidence now, proof of her affair, her lies, her betrayal. I also discovered she'd been secretly transferring money from our joint account into her personal account, trying to hide her tracks. I felt a cold rage boiling inside me. I'd given her everything, my trust, my love, my savings, and she'd repaid me with lies, betrayal, and theft. It was like I'd been living with a stranger all along. One afternoon, I found myself going through her phone just out of curiosity, trying to find anything else she might be hiding. That's when I saw the texts from Mark, more explicit ones, talking about their plans to meet up again, about how much they missed each other. There was even a picture of her in bed with him, a photo she'd sent to him, thinking she was safe. I stared at it in disbelief. I'd never even suspected she'd go that far. The betrayal cut so deep I felt physically sick. That night I sat her down again. I told her I knew the truth, that I had all the evidence I needed. Her face went pale and she started crying, but this time it was different. It wasn't fake tears, it was genuine desperation. She begged me to forgive her, said she was sorry, that she'd do anything to fix this. She said she'd been so stressed, so overwhelmed, that she made terrible decisions. She tried to make me feel guilty, saying I was the reason she turned to Mark for comfort. That was the moment I realized she was a master manipulator. She could spin anything to her advantage. But I wasn't buying her apologies anymore. I felt numb. I'd always believed in the vows we made, that we'd be honest and loyal, and now I saw how she'd shattered that. I knew I had to end this, not just for myself, but for any shred of dignity I had left. I told her I wanted her out of the house, that I was filing for divorce, and that I'd be taking her to court to get back what she'd stolen. I could see the panic in her eyes, but I didn't care. If anything, it made me more determined to see this through. Later that night, I sat alone in the living room, staring at the walls she'd decorated, the memories we'd made. All I could think about was how she'd lied to me, how she'd used me, and how she'd betrayed everything we'd built together. It was a feeling I'd never experienced before, this cold, aching emptiness mixed with a burning desire for justice. I knew I had to be careful, that she'd try to manipulate the situation, maybe even try to turn the kids against me if she thought she could. But I wasn't going to let her get away with it. In the quiet darkness, I made a promise to myself. I'd fight for what's right, for what I deserve. I'd get my money back, I'd expose her lies, and I'd rebuild my life, even if it meant starting from scratch. The pain was sharp, but I knew I'd survive it. I had to. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that sometimes the deepest betrayals come from the people you trust the most. And when that happens, the only thing left to do is fight back. The legal process moved faster than I expected, and honestly, I was surprised at how quickly things started to unravel for Lisa once I had legal counsel. She kept insisting she hadn't done anything wrong, that I was just overreacting, that I didn't understand her stress and how hard she was trying to hold everything together. But I saw through her bullshit now. She was trying to cling to her lies, but the evidence against her was piling up. The emails, the bank statements, the sale of the house, all of it was concrete proof. One day, I got a call from my lawyer telling me that Lisa had sold the house without my consent, and she transferred a large sum of money into her own account. She was trying to hide her tracks, but it was too late. The legal papers were already being prepared for a divorce, and I was filing for full financial settlement. I was determined to get back what she'd stolen, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it this time. I could tell she was panicking, calling me nonstop, trying to plead her case, but I wasn't having it. I'd lost all trust in her, and I wanted nothing to do with her lies anymore. Meanwhile, she was still insisting that I was the one cheating her out of her inheritance. She'd spun this story that I'd been hiding money, that I'd cheated her somehow. She'd even gone as far as to accuse me of having an affair myself, which was laughable. I had no time for her manipulations anymore. I had proof of her affair, her theft, her lies, and I was going to use all of it. I started gathering everything: screenshots, bank records, her messages with Mark. I wanted her to see that I wasn't just some naive husband. I was prepared to fight for what was rightfully mine. The most shocking thing came when I finally confronted her face to face. She looked desperate, like she'd lost her grip on everything. I told her I was done playing her game. I told her I knew about the affair, about the sale of the house, about the money she'd stolen. Her face twisted in anger, then in denial. She kept insisting she was the victim, that I'd cheated her, that I'd lied about everything. But I'd had enough of her lies. I told her I was going to take her to court, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she'd done. She screamed at me, called me a jealous bastard, a controlling asshole, saying I was ruining her life. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I felt a sense of clarity. I saw her for what she really was, someone who'd betrayed her vows, her family, and her own integrity just for her own selfish gains. I knew I had to be strong, that I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I was done being a victim of her lies. I was going to fight back, even if it meant tearing everything apart. That night I sat alone again, staring at the phone, wondering what the future would bring. I knew Lisa wouldn't go down without a fight, and I was prepared for whatever she threw at me. I'd already lost so much: the house, trust, my peace of mind. But I wasn't going to lose everything. Not without a battle. She'd taken everything she could, but I was determined to take back what was mine. I'd make her pay for her betrayal, and I'd rebuild my life from the ashes. The pain was still there, but so was my resolve. I had to keep going. I had to win. The court dates came and went faster than I expected, but each session felt like a punch to the gut. Lisa showed up with her usual bitchy attitude, trying to act innocent, pretending she was the wronged wife. She kept lying, spinning stories about how she was just trying to help, how I was too paranoid, and that I'd been cheating her out of her inheritance all along. She looked me dead in the eyes and told the judge I'd been controlling, that I'd been abusive, things that couldn't be further from the truth. But I had all the evidence, and I made sure to present it clearly. During the proceedings, I also discovered she'd moved money into multiple accounts, trying to hide her assets. She'd even opened new accounts under fake names, thinking she could outrun the truth. The judge wasn't fooled, though. The evidence was overwhelming. When I testified about how she secretly sold the house and used the money to pay off her ex's gambling debts, I saw her flinch. She knew she was losing, that her lies weren't going to save her anymore. The most satisfying moment was when the judge ordered her to return the stolen funds and to give me full custody of the remaining assets. She tried to object, to call me a liar, but her voice cracked under the weight of the truth. In the end, she was awarded a minimal amount, just enough to cover her legal fees, but she was ordered to pay me back everything she'd taken, plus interest. I felt a strange mix of relief and anger. Justice, at least in some form, was finally being served, but the real blow came when I saw her face after the ruling. She looked defeated, furious, and most of all, exposed. I realized she'd been living a lie, not just to me but to herself. Her manipulations had all unraveled in front of the court, and she had no choice but to accept the consequences. I walked out of that courtroom feeling like I'd reclaimed a piece of myself, my dignity, my money, my peace of mind. It wasn't the ending I'd imagined, but it was the ending I needed. In the aftermath, I started to piece my life back together. I moved out of the house, which I leased out to cover my expenses, and I cut all ties with Lisa. I knew she'd try to come back to manipulate her way into my life again, but I was done. I learned that trust is fragile and betrayal cuts deep, sometimes so deep that it reshapes everything you thought you knew. But I also learned I was stronger than I believed. I could survive this. I could rebuild. Looking back, I see how naive I was to think I could save a marriage built on lies and deceit. But I don't regret fighting for what's right. The betrayal hurt like hell, but it also woke me up. If there's anything I want to tell anyone in a similar situation, it's this: don't ignore the warning signs. Trust your instincts, gather your proof, and don't be afraid to take a stand. Because if you don't, someone else will take what's yours, your money, your happiness, your life. And then it's too late to turn back. I'm still healing, but I know now that I'm capable of more than I ever thought. I just wish I'd seen it sooner. Now, sitting here reflecting on everything, I realize just how much this whole nightmare changed me. I used to believe in the idea of a perfect marriage, in honesty and loyalty. Lisa's betrayal shattered that illusion completely, but it also forced me to see my own strength, how resilient I can be when pushed to the edge. Losing the house, the trust, the years we shared hurt like hell, but at the same time, it made me confront some hard truths about myself and what I deserve. I learned that betrayal isn't just about infidelity or money. It's about the trust you place in someone and how quickly that trust can be broken. I also learned how important it is to protect yourself, to keep your eyes open, and never let anyone manipulate you into giving up what's rightfully yours. The process of fighting back was brutal, but it was necessary. It made me realize I'm capable of standing up for myself, even when everything feels like it's falling apart. Looking ahead, I know I'll never forget what happened, but I also know I can move forward. I've started rebuilding my finances, working on my emotional health, and focusing on what truly matters, my own well-being and peace of mind. I've learned to be cautious but not bitter, to trust again but carefully. The scars will always be there, but they remind me of how far I've come. If I could offer any advice to someone in a similar situation, it's this: don't stay silent. Gather your evidence, get help, and stand your ground. No one has the right to steal your happiness, your money, or your future. And if someone betrays you, remember that you're stronger than you think. You can survive, you can rebuild, and you can come out better on the other side. It's not easy, and the pain may never fully go away, but it's worth fighting for your own peace. Because in the end, the only person who truly has your back is yourself.